Hello everybody, it is webinar about the PPC survey. PPC survey is like, I think, one of the biggest surveys in the PPC landscape. I think it originated by Wijnand. Wasn't it your initiative, Wijnand, some time ago?
A couple of years ago. I mean, it was definitely not the first PPC survey ever.
No.
But I think it's the first where we try to do it consistently and with partners and just reach a bigger and bigger audience. And so I think we reached that goal. And
yeah, we've now 1,151 respondents. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
After cleaning up all the fake responses. So it was like 1,400 before, but yeah.
Okay. We even had one from Andorra, so there must be a nice agency there in Andorra.
Yeah, sure. From all over the world,
All over the world. That's nice. So this, we're going to do an introduction round soon, but this PPC survey is also sponsored by Data Feed Watch and Product Hero. They're not part of the webinar today, but they sponsored it. Thanks for them. Of course, welcome all our viewers. We're going to have a nice conversation about 40-45 minutes about the results of PPC survey. Maybe first a short introduction round. Wijnand, I start with you. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Wijnand Meijer, one of the founders of TrueClicks, which we've been doing about 7-8 years now. And before I was working agency side for over 8 years. So doing PPC for more than 15 years now. Yeah.
Also based in the Netherlands.
Yes.
Coincidentally, yes.
Yep, sort of.
Yeah. Ed, short introduction about you.
Yeah, quick one. 15 years in the industry. Oh yeah, I'm Ed Leake, should say my name first.
Yeah.
Agency owner, sold that. Also have a software product, AdEvolver. But my main thing that people know me for now is God-tier ads.
How subtle, Ed. How subtle.
Very subtle. Should have got the tattoo on, which is essentially a training framework for Google Ads, which is 4 years old. So that's me.
Yeah, interesting. Mike Ryan.
Thanks for having me. So I've been at Smarter Ecommerce, also known as SMEC, for 8 years, and the company's a bit older than that, 17 years. So we've been working in Google Ads for e-commerce, retailers and brands that whole time. And nowadays we're spending a lot of time and energy on Performance Max. That's...
SMEC is abbreviation, Smarter Ecommerce. SMEC.
Yeah, we could get into a whole explanation about that, but I don't want to bore people to death.
No.
So it's the SM from Smarter and the EC from e-commerce. It's a German-Austrian thing.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the introduction, and great that you are here. Fred Vallaeys.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeroen. So I'm Fred Vallaeys. I'm the third panelist today who speaks Dutch.
Yes.
But I spend most of my time living in California. Co-founded Optmyzr. Also a weird spelling, so if you type in Optmyzr, you may or may not find us. But we do PPC management software. Before that, I was at Google back in 2002, so I've been working in the industry for quite a long time, and really happy that Wijnand revived PPC survey and asked sponsors to help, and we're really happy to be part of it.
Sure. Welcome. Yeah, we could continue in Dutch, but that would not be handy for the rest of the viewers, I think. So let's stick to English. So I'm Jeroen, founder of Swydo. Swydo is a reporting platform. Indeed, we're also based near Amsterdam in Hilversum, and happy to host this webinar. Let's dive into the details, guys, into the interesting results of the PPC survey. So a lot of respondents indeed this year, a lot of quality respondents. So I think we can draw interesting conclusions out of that. One of the first things, of course, we asked, what do you do? And we saw that 52% were agency respondents, advertisers with in-house teams, freelancers, and a small percentage were advertisers themselves. Maybe a question to Wijnand. Do you think like an advertiser with an in-house team can serve a bit like an agency because you have internal stakeholders and you have to also sort of manage those stakeholders internally? Or is an agency really different than an in-house team?
I mean, some in-house teams are really big, and then it starts looking a bit like an agency, right? It's like 20 people because there's so much media spent to be managed. So then it's like a mini agency within an advertiser. But let's be honest, most advertisers just need, if they do it in-house, 1 or 2 people, because that justifies, the spend usually doesn't justify like many full-time employees. So then it's definitely not like an agency. So this is pretty similar every year, right? what you can draw from this, most of the respondents do PPC, right? That's their job, right? Or they manage a team, or they actually do it. But I'm always, disappointed, but I understand it. Is that very small 4% at the top there? Those are the brands that hire an agency. So they don't do PPC themselves, but they hire an agency.
Sure.
We have a custom version of the survey for them, right? We won't go into depth about all the details in it, but we want to know about what they care about, what they think about their agency. But the responses are not significant usually, right? That's usually like 40, 50 people. So that's too bad. That's my biggest wish for this survey, is to make that group bigger. But then again, how are we going to reach them? Because they're not really in the PPC space, because they outsource that to an agency.
Sure.
So that's kind of my thoughts on this.
Yeah. Anybody else has a take on this? So agency or advertising?
I would really say, like, to take the survey, right? The advertisers hiring an agency, and maybe you feel like, oh, you're going to ask me questions that I don't know about, and that's why I'm also hiring someone to do PPC for me. I have no expertise in this, but that's exactly why we have a different branch of the survey. So we would love to see those responses, because there's definitely useful information in there too.
Yeah.
And if
sure,
I was just going to add, sorry, if agencies are that confident in their work, perhaps they next year or this year could share the survey with their clients to get some feedback. Because of course it will. Yeah. So that'd be a nice thing to do,
right? We won't be able to know like which agency, which client, etc. That those relationships will totally be unknown to us. So maybe agencies can tell their clients, like, hey, go fill in this survey. That's probably the quickest way to reach a lot of brands, and they will have a super short version of it, like a 2-minute version versus the 10-minute version that the full version is.
Good idea. Let's take that for the next year. So let's go to the next topic. We asked them what the top priority for 2025 was, and I thought that this were kind of surprising, but I really like to hear your opinion about it, of course. Campaign performance, business growth, that were the top ones. You would imagine in 2025, I think, well, Fred, you know better than I do, but maybe 20 years after Google Ads was introduced, or 25 years, that campaign performance should not be in a real struggle, but apparently it is.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a struggle. I think it's a goal. Everybody's under a lot of pressure, right? And I think agencies, particularly, that was 50% of the respondents.
Yeah.
I'm certainly hearing that their clients come to them and say, hey, listen, can you do more with less resources? Or can you at least stay at the same level with fewer resources? So that inherently just means that there's some level of performance that needs to be enhanced. And that could be better results in the ad platform, but it could also just be performance in terms of efficiency. And then I think business growth, that's obviously something everybody cares about. That's why most people are in business, to grow it, to grow the profits, to grow the revenue. I suppose I'm a little surprised that AI and automation is not kind of one of the top line items there, because I think that's one of the ones that can certainly help with efficiency and growth. But I guess it's all somewhat interconnected at the end of the day.
Mike, do you see the same pattern?
I mean,
campaign performance is also like the big one.
Yeah, I would love to view campaign performance and business growth as highly synonymous in a perfect world, but there is sometimes anyway a disconnect between what you're achieving between one and the other. I mean, even working with in-house teams, we experience a lot that they're often, it's partly a role thing. So as Frederick mentioned, there's like a selection bias here between the amount of agencies, and then there's also just from the roles that we're speaking to. Like a lot of these people, their title is performance marketing manager or something like that. And they're just often very tunnel vision focused on what's happening in the platform and what do these campaigns look like. So I think it's only natural that we see a result like that. But I think that business growth in the current economic environment, where growth is not expected to be so big this year in all likelihood, I think business growth should be the top priority, even potentially at the expense of campaign performance.
Yeah, I think
of course, the economic conditions are also a bit changing, of course. So yeah, I can imagine that ROI is maybe harder in some respects.
Yeah, what
Wijnand?
Mike said, we don't see that on the slides, but this highly correlates with the roles people have. Right? If your role is to do hands-on campaign management, and then your answer to this is, by the way, an open-ended question, so people can type in whatever they want. And we classified campaign performance, any answer containing leads, CPA, ROAS, ROI, all that stuff. So that's all campaign performance. Then we have more like the team leads, we're level higher in seniority, and they're more likely to answer things like business growth, like growing the team, growing the business, growing the revenues. So it's really related to, and then you see these other, and sometimes people give a longer answer, but almost everyone cares about one of these two, and sometimes they add some stuff to it, right? And we also need to do more with AI and automation, or I need to, up my skills for whatever, and then it's personal development. So that's kind of how these word clouds come to be.
Yeah. But it strikes out that campaign performance indeed is a big topic, business growth, of course, in the whole context of the economic conditions, and think the moving parts we have in our industry, of course, because there are always moving parts in our industry. So that's the fun fact I think about the PPC industry. It's never a dull moment. So we also asked them, is it harder or easier to manage PPC campaigns compared to...
By the way, if we can edit this, but I think it's just fun to go one bit up because we break it down here only when there are outliers.
Yeah.
Right. So here you see the top priority broken down by company type. Most are pretty similar, but you see the personal development for the freelancer makes sense, is really much higher than in the other, because the freelancer is on its own, right? So he or she really needs to continuously work on
personal development.
Kind of makes sense, but just fun to see that reflected here.
Yeah,
it's all about the money.
No, personal development is not about money, right?
No,
for
everyone.
In-house
Performance, growth. It's brass tacks, isn't it?
Well, performance, as I said, could be ROAS, CPA, which is kind of indirectly efficiency, and but yeah, indeed, yeah.
What do you think about that measurement is not that high in the top priority list? Well, I think that measurement is still, a lot of companies and advertisers still measure, struggle with measurement, with the right attribution, etc. Is it now maybe that people are sort of say, okay, the truth will never be there, so let's go to campaign performance, or what's your take on it? Yeah,
I think that this is it's good that you called this out, because I think this is the area that most people need to resolve, and it's not necessarily campaign performance, but it would come as a result of fixing their measurement, first party data in particular.
Yeah,
and there are lots of case studies out there now showing how you're owning your data is far more important than relying on Google Ads conversion data and their data-driven attribution. So yeah, you are completely right. This assumes that, well, if we look at this, 90% of people have got it figured out. I don't believe that's true.
To add saying that 90% got it figured out, and I would say, or has given it up, or expect someone else to take care of it, right? Like, oh, that's not my job, doing all these boring implementations of tracking, etc. That's also maybe why it's not their priority.
I agree with Wijnand on that one. I think if you also look at cross-channel is extremely low, and that may indicate that the people who fill this out have one specific area they work on, and measurement within one area tends to be relatively well figured out. I think where the challenges tend to come in is cross-channel attribution models. How is my social impacting my paid search? How is that impacting my SEO? All of that. That is a complicated question, and I totally agree. It is not solved. It is something that organizations need to worry about. But maybe the type of people who filled out the survey were more in one channel and therefore pretty happy with the state of things.
Big value add for the agencies and freelancers on this list that are doing this. Because if a freelancer's shirking the responsibility because it's not my wheelhouse, it's not my remit, well, what about the freelancer that turns up and says, I'll deal with that for you and I'll implement it properly? So there's two sides to that one. Opportunity.
Yeah, because this is an area that maybe should have become easier for everybody, but it really has not become easier because you have to sort of upload client lists or whatever you have to do to get all the insights, of course. So so maybe in an area...
marketing. Sorry, Jeroen, to cut you off, but so at Google Marketing Live, that's exactly what Google went up on stage and said, right? They called it the alphabet soup of tracking, where there's countless APIs for OCI, ECL, conversion updates, all of these different things. And so that's why it's not easy, but they're trying to unify it to make it easier for people to do. And that's also the thing that I keep finding a little strange is that B2B advertisers keep going to these events from Google and saying, hey, can you launch cool new things like you're always doing for e-commerce? But at the end of the day, like the biggest thing that someone in B2B can do is connect their data properly, have proper attribution, proper conversion tracking. And that informs the automated smart bidding models, how to do a better job for you, right? And who cares about some shiny bells and whistles if you're not even doing that one, because that is the biggest impact you can have. So completely agree with everyone here. Like if you're a freelancer, if you're an agency and you can fix this problem for your client, like that is a huge value add.
Yeah. So a big opportunity there for agencies and freelancers to get the knowledge and help the clients with that. All right, let's go to the next subject. Is managing PPC campaigns harder or easier than 2 years ago? Ed, what do you think about the results?
Yeah, this is somewhat harder and much harder. I guess the much harder, okay, it's not a massive percentage, but I'd be interested to know specifically what people are struggling with. And part of it is probably the fact that we've had so much automation drilled into us. And does hard become a result of losing some control and therefore some vision? Because if you've been in the industry more than 5 years, then the way you used to operate and work is very different to today. And you had more data, you had arguably more buttons to push, or you could argue that just as many buttons, they move them around. There's certainly more data, more conversion data, more search term data, and so on. So is it a reflection of that? I'm losing data, therefore I'm losing control. I'm losing visibility, therefore I'm losing control. It's harder as a result.
Yeah,
this is the conundrum for Google, right? Yeah, exactly. They're more red here, and it's the conundrum for Google is like they wanted to build something that was easier for the majority of advertisers, right? And so they introduced PMAX, and PMAX is legitimately easier than someone who's never done PPC before and just put in a couple of settings, and it's going to give you average, decent results. But for all the people filling out this survey and the people listening to this call, you got PPC or performance marketing in your job title. And for you, this is frustrating, right? Because you have fewer levers to some degree, and so it has changed. But I think there's also the broader thing that we have to consider. Like next year, these numbers are going to be even worse, and they're going to keep getting worse because we're shifting from keyword advertising to prompt advertising. Right? People are starting to not do searches based on keywords. They're starting to be trained on how to interact with chat models. And that is a complete fundamental change of how the ad systems have worked for the past 20 years. And so that level of control, that level of specificity that we've lost, we're just going to continue to lose more of that. And it's about advertising at the moment of relevance. And that relevance used to be quantified through a keyword. But with all of these LLM systems that have memory and know you far better than any keyword system in the past, like someone could type in a keyword that's fairly random to us, but it could determine that is the right moment of relevance to show an ad for something, right? But we can't understand why that was because we don't have that full insight, and that's challenging and that's frustrating.
There's also one other thing, and I do agree with that, Fred. But this is actually a very balanced result if you look at it. The extreme ends are about the same share, and the somewhats are about they're similar share. Okay, about the same and somewhat mixed, but it's kind of balanced. So I do wonder how it will shift, but it is sort of balance.
In
the hard versus easier.
The target group are the agencies, so probably indeed for advertisers, the world has become less complex. They press a few buttons and they have a running ad campaign.
There are some extra information on this, right? So if we go down, we will see the breakdown.
Let's go to the next slide.
Compared to last year. Yeah. And there will be a word cloud explaining why people find it easier.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want
to time, but
go to this one. So what has made it easier than 2 years ago?
Easier first, yeah.
I don't want to contradict you, Ed, but on that last slide before, and it's fine if we don't have to go back, but I mean, there was like 52% of respondents saying that it's harder, like a lot harder or somewhat harder, and then there were only about 13% saying that it's a lot easier, somewhat easier. So I don't really view it as balanced. I think that people are definitely finding it harder.
Sorry, Mike, was the grey one not somewhat?
The
Did
gray
I
one,
misread
the gray
it?
one was
Gray
neutral.
is kind of the
Neutral,
same.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
there-
sorry, apologies. I misread that. I thought it was somewhat. Okay. Oh, so the majority actually think it's harder.
Definitely,
Interesting.
definitely.
I wouldn't agree with that right now.
Yeah, and of that minority who thinks that it's getting easier, this is an interesting result, especially when we see it compared to the next slide about why it's getting harder. But there's a very dominant reason here, which is automation, and the rest, and immediately goes into long tail of other reasons. But there's pretty broad consensus, or at least half of the respondents who found it easier think it's because of automation, and that differs from AI too. Like there's a little glossary explaining the reasons, like what the definitions are here. But with automation, we're talking about like scripts and rules, smart bidding. People are satisfied with that level of automation, and they're less satisfied with AI features like PMAX, for example. Because I think with automation, they feel like, okay, well, this is rule-based. There's a high amount of control in here. I can understand what's happening, and it's just doing my work for me. And that's a different feeling than with AI. So that's the way I interpret this what we're seeing here.
That's a continuation, I think, of what we saw in the last year's survey, that people are happy with scripts, but they're unhappy with automatically generated creatives. They're unhappy with automatically applied optimizations. Right, the thing where they don't have the control, that's where they get frustrated. But the automation that they decide, the automation layers that they control, that's what people love.
So
Yeah,
the grunt work, so doing a lot of repetitive things, that helps them in their daily jobs at the moment.
Yeah. And let's go to the next one where you will see what made it harder. Right, this is kind of the 50. Well, this one, right? So this is the 52% or so that things is getting harder, and we see pretty same things every year. For example, competition, which includes people complaining about higher CPCs. If you read the comments, you will often see things like, basically, I keep paying higher and higher CPCs, but I don't get more conversions or more revenue or whatever. So the basically efficiency gets worse every year, which at one point makes me think like, yeah, maybe you want to, maybe advertisers will move that money then, right? I mean, if you get you can get cheaper clicks someplace else with decent results. Curious how that will go, but probably not soon. Yeah.
My eggs are more expensive. My food is more expensive. My car insurance is more expensive. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's the way the world is moving right now. It's not enough.
Yeah.
Exactly, but that's just the way the world right now.
You need your own hens, then you get your own eggs.
So that's
I saw a funny side this morning. It was, I poop breakfast. What is your superpower? That's what the chicken says.
very good.
Got 8 of them. Eggs for breakfast.
That's right.
This leans in. This loss of control leans into my assumption about people not tracking, and it's not a priority. Well, a measurement and tracking would give you back a lot of control. So there's some, there's a yin and yang here.
I think control is also not being able to decide everything that Google does, right? The targeting, so
I don't think you need to.
Yeah, that of course, first you have to accept that, and then you will no longer complain about it. But if you still feel the need to control a bit more, and Google won't allow you to, by the way, note that this survey was done like half a year ago, so I think Google has made some more availability around PMAX and controls there, so maybe that will get better. Less complaints about that, but that's what people mean. Loss of control means I cannot,
press the button.
Tell Google exactly what to do.
Isn't it also about these are mostly agencies that responded, so their raison d'être, their existence, is of course that they have a certain amount of knowledge and they help their clients, etc., etc. So it's also maybe not a threat, but it's of course sort of a redefinition of the role of the agency constantly, because they have to. If you are in control, you can explain to your customer what you are doing, what is happening, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean on the next.
Ahead,
just the next slide will show us the differences between like in-house and agency. And in-house teams definitely care more about cost and competition. Yeah. But there's a pretty uniform amount of concern about loss of control.
Yeah, in-house teams also. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I like to Frederick's point earlier. This technology was supposed to be making things easier, right? And Google faces a conundrum here. I mean, Frederick has talked for years. Even he has a book called "Leveling the Plane" or "Unleveling the Playing Field." I think it's harder now to make a really crap campaign than it was before. But it's also harder to do PPC really well for someone who knew certain working modes and there were just certain reports and levers that were available in the past. I think it's much more level. But there's even like another layer to this kind of conundrum where like these larger advertisers who might have more in-house knowledge than an SMB, or they might understand the platforms better. They find that their hands are tied behind their back a bit. But then the SMBs, maybe they got uplifted by the technology, but they might not necessarily have the data volume that the technology really needs. So like on the one hand, SMBs should be doing really well, but they don't have a huge data volume to power the algorithms. And then these larger advertisers, they've got a lot of data volume, but they feel like they can't do advanced tactics, and everyone gets bound into this kind of more averaged result. I think that's what causes a lot of frustration right now.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add a bit of positivity? Because this
No.
And it's not a pitch, but I have a private group where we do this all the time, Alpha, okay? And it's specifically B2C services, local businesses, the people that don't have big budgets, don't have a lot of data, 30 conversions, 50 conversions, 100 if they're lucky. First-party data, tracking offline data, conversion quality, with the client as well, understanding what a qualified lead looks like, what it doesn't, yada, yada, yada. Doing that has fixed that loss of control, because you no longer care about loss of control. You care about the quality of your data. Your data becomes your control, gives you confidence, gives you results. And I mean, like proper results, 25, 30% conversion rates, like exceptional results. And I'm seeing it all the time because people are focused on better tracking, server side or first party, however you deal with it, offline conversion tracking, and that being the focus. And they're not worried about all the tactics inside Google Ads. Obviously, you've got to have a good account. It can't be crap, but bringing back that control makes so much difference. And there's a lot. This is why I keep looking at these numbers going, people are ignoring the bit that fixes this and gives you confidence as well.
And it ties together, right? It's, in the initial slides where it's performance is one of the key things people seek.
Mm-hmm.
If people got great performance, then they would care far less about things like loss of control, because they'd be like, oh, automation is doing what it needs to do. And my data that I'm adding is getting me to where I need to be. And again, I think to us, a lot of people on this call, it's like, yeah, it is obvious that if you put better data in the system, you're going to get that better performance that you seek. And then who cares about measurement this or control that, right? But I think a lot of people do struggle with tying so many different pieces together. And I was talking to Menachem Ani, who talks a lot about PMAX, but he was basically saying, like, listen, PMAX is actually one of the more complex campaign types, even though it was launched to be the easy one. But it has so many nuances and so many new reports coming in, and then you don't quite know, what should I do with this? Can I take this data and actually make a decision based on it, or does Google not accept it? And if I'm making a decision based on something channel related, like, am I actually doing the right thing, or is there part of the picture that I'm completely missing? Am I looking at the wrong data? And I think that's what makes it somewhat frustrating, and probably what bubbles up these things, like saying loss of control is a big one.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, I think people have to get used to it and get adjusted to it. And I think it's a good thing you mentioned, Ed. What's the positive side? I think the positive side, what I hear is that there is still a lot to dots to connect. So there's still a lot of opportunities to optimize, and we are maybe before the next wave where the dots will be connected, and maybe CPCs go down in a certain way. Yeah.
And just one other thing. So I had a chat with Ben Kruger on my Not Podcast, and so he's the head of chief marketing officer at the Ticket Center. They spend $120 million a year, a lot of money, on Google Ads, and they're using around about 15-20% PMAX. And you'd think at that scale they'd have a lot more PMAX. So again, don't look at PMAX and think you have to use it. You don't have to use it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. It's still optional. And if it doesn't give you the results, it doesn't give you the control that you desire, you don't have to use it. It's sort of positive.
It's a
Yeah.
bit like people complaining about what's on TV, right? You don't have to watch it. You can also
Yes. Turn the thing off. It's crap.
yeah.
Yeah, so the good old-fashioned search campaign is still in your toolkit. if you
And
wanna
standard
use it.
shopping.
Yeah.
Standard shopping
Yeah.
still works.
I think
Sometimes
I think
better.
I have a trademark on that line, Ed. But
I think, Mike, you and I discussed it
yeah, we
3
did.
years ago,
Yeah.
and we said it then, and I've literally
still
spoken to
true
Andrew
now.
Log, and we've discussed it again, and he showed me some results. It's like, yeah, it's still working.
It does.
Yeah, so there is positivity.
Also, it
Especially-
depends a bit on the industry, of course. If you're in shopping or B2B or B2C without shopping or whatever your business you're in, I think you have a different set of tools at your disposal that you can use. And maybe in B2B, it's more logical at the moment still to use the old-fashioned search terms campaign. And in shopping, of course, PMAX is maybe the one to go.
Old-fashioned.
Yeah, it works. Let's go
Bloody
to.
does.
Would you prefer traditional, Ed, or like
It's not old-fashioned. It still works. I
classic?
could literally pull up 1,000 accounts running keywords, exacts, no broads, converting like gangbusters.
A lot
So
of negatives. Yeah.
Let's agree on old-timey. Is that better, Ed?
old-timey. Whatever
Old-timey.
works.
I'm just
Don't
trolling
care
you.
about labels. If it does the job, stick it in. That's a weird expression. Carry on.
We're gonna need to edit.
Time for the next slide.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's keep moving.
Time for AI. So we asked, of course, about AI-based solutions, and specifically outside of the ad platforms, because of course the ad platforms themselves are constantly now adding AI features. You can use those, of course. I think also tools like we represent in this group are adding now AI features, and of course you have AI tools that are not industry specific, but you can use them, of course, for your optimization work. And I think explicitly we mentioned those, Wijnand, I think in this question.
Yeah.
So,
So it says also on the question like ChatGPT and or any of the other ones. I think there's also a slide because we asked it now 2 times in a row, comparing it. Yeah, that one. I think that's because it gives you the same data sort of, but then compared to a year before, and a year before was basically a year after ChatGPT was launched. So you see now 2 consecutive years, and these are only people asking or answering often or always. So we left out the people that answer sometimes. That would make obviously the percentages go higher. But
it's a big change, isn't it?
in 1 year's time, you see a significant increase on all these tasks, so to speak, where people say, I often or always use AI to help me write ads, number one, write emails, and so forth. Not sure if anyone wants to, and we have some also other cool visuals where we correlate frequency of usage and satisfaction about AI on that task. But I'm not sure if before we go there, if anyone wants to comment on this specific results. Yeah, Ed?
I can say one thing because I'm sure Fred will want to chime in as well. Sorry, Fred, if I jumped in. There's overwhelm. So most people I talk to, they're overwhelmed by AI, but everyone wants to use it. So this is not my idea, but you can use Claude per client and have a master template per client. And I've started using it, and it's excellent actually. So you give it context to your client. Obviously, this doesn't help the small percentage of business owners that are watching this, but you could do it for your own business. So treat yourself as a client. So yes, it does apply. So why am I talking about this? It cuts out needing all these different tools to do all these different things. You have essentially a master template that you feed it all your business data. You tell it about your business, your product, your weaknesses, strengths, your pricing, etc., USPs, as much information as you can. And then when you ask it to write ad copy, when you ask it to improve the landing page or the product page, when you ask it to do strategy for your Google Ads campaign, it has context. And it's not a gimmick. It actually works quite well, better than something like ChatGPT or Gemini. So that amalgamates a lot of thinking and requirement of additional tools. I'm sure someone else will come along and do something better. But for now, that master project template in Claude is a really nifty feature. You put half an hour into it, your outputs become so much more tailored, because that's the other side of this coin. A lot of the outputs you get are quite cutter. They're not that great. So content writers, skilled ones, have still got an advantage. LMM's getting better, but it can be a little bit generic.
Yeah, so the writing ads, writing emails were the top ones. Keywords research. What surprised me a little bit, or maybe that's the next step, that people are not really using it for more the strategy side. Yeah, it is increasing, I see.
Because it's generic.
Also, maybe ask the LLM to help you with, hey, this is my client, this is the performance, I'm struggling with this, what could I do next, or something like that.
I think that would be generating insights and recommendations. It would be a bit higher on the list. I think strategy would be even one level higher. Like maybe you're going to start a new campaign. Like help the AI like select your target audiences, platforms, like all that stuff. Yeah. So that's I mean, people do it increasingly, but not too.
Right, that's where I think as a business owner myself and all of you, and anyone who's running a business, it's so helpful to have that assistant that you don't even have to type to, right? But you just go into voice mode and you have a conversation about that thing that you really should be doing for your business, but that you haven't been doing. Like I'm not particularly passionate about finance, but I do have to take care of some finance related things at Optmyzr. And so I can have that conversation. And at some level, you're saying, yes, the advice is generic. But to me, having generic advice that I get quickly that I can act on is better than not doing this at all. Right. And then that frees up time to run the parts of my business that I do care about. And like you're saying, some of the ad text is also generic. And you have a very particular sense of humor, right? So there's something very unique that you can bring that's above and beyond what GPT would do. And then the other point that I would make, I love your example, Ed, about the projects in cloud or the custom GPTs in OpenAI. It fixes this, but I think people also limit themselves a little bit too much to saying, listen, I've got one assistant that can help me. And even if they're custom assistants for different clients or different projects, that's great. But like, there's no reason you couldn't have 1,000 assistants, each with a specific skill. And so one way that I've been using this is when I write a blog post, I have 5 different personas who each weigh in with their opinions about what I've written. And one of them is super skeptical, and one is a CMO, so they care about the big picture, and one of them is an account manager, so they only care about the details of how to execute it. But all of this still becomes tedious, right? You have to go back and you have to prompt it, and then you have to take the prompt and do something. But you can start building systems that actually connect these things together, and now you can be like, okay, here's my objective for my ad campaign, and it's agentic AI now. Now it's like, okay, well, we got to figure out the keywords, and once we have the keywords, we got to write the ad text, and then we have to group it, and then we have to do the bidding, and blah, 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 right? And if that can be put together in a flow, then we're going to see this really take off. But I don't think for a lot of people, they figured out how to put this together in a workflow that is as streamlined as what they currently do to some degree in a manual fashion.
I'm glad you're as manic as me, Fred, using... I now use all the major AI tools and give them all the same task. And then I get them all to essentially vet their own each other's tasks and tell me which is the best one out of the bunch. It's mind-numbing, and there will be a better way to do it in the future, but it sounds like you're doing that as well. But it's... For the average person, that is just so much work. This is why the technology is not quite there yet, and it's not taking jobs just yet, but it's going to come. It's going to come. But you're quite right. You don't just have to use Claude. Use them all, but then that's more time, and you end up spending more time doing AI stuff than actually doing the task. Sometimes
you can ask one AI to instruct the other AI or something like that.
Yeah, and their output, you put it into the next one. Say, I asked this. What do you think? It comes back and gives it a critique.
It's like critic to the other AI. Yeah,
and you could go on forever, and they go mental.
But it's good to see that it's a big increase, and I think a lot of agencies are using these tools also for internal workflow, like meetings and making meeting summaries, maybe client meeting summaries, etc.
Maybe we can look at one more visual related to this. Probably the next one. No, then the next one is satisfaction, and this one plots it. I think there's another also that plots it even a bit better, kind of, right? Okay, so here, for people thinking, what is this? basically you're seeing satisfaction and usage being plotted, and there's a very obvious correlation, right? The most popular, so most used, are often also the ones that people are most satisfied about. And we found 2 outliers where meetings, people are actually pretty satisfied about using AI for meetings. That's just basically recording meetings, summarizing them. And what I especially like about some of these tools is they clearly kind of filter out the next steps. So you could have an hour-long conversation, and then it will, and sprinkled out throughout that conversation, there are like 5 action items. And the better ones just put those at the top of the summary, like these are the action items. So the takeaway here is, more people should use that because people are pretty happy about it. And on the other hand is they're generating insights and recommendations, which usage is relatively high, but satisfaction is relatively low. I mean, it's still more than 50%, but it's lower than, it doesn't nicely plot on the same line there. Where this is a time to plug some software, maybe. No, but it's
let's do it.
no, but apparently.
But I think. But I'll jump in there because you said let's because I think this illustrates. And sorry, I got my hands disappearing and I'm getting excited. But no, if you look on the left of the spectrum where people are not satisfied and not using things as much, it tends to be the things where you need to give the system data to do something sensible. You need to ground it. You cannot do forecasting and budget management without proper mathematics and without proper information about how your campaigns have done over the past couple of years. And so that's a bigger lift for the average advertiser than saying, write me some ads, right? With no context, write me some ads for a flower delivery service in Paris. It'll do pretty decent on language tasks, but anything numbers related, you really need to ground it. And that's where it becomes hard. And that's where people need to figure out, how do I connect my data into it? And now that itself becomes as complicated as the other things. And like when I started writing scripts a decade ago, like my biggest problem eventually became like, how do I keep these scripts all running and executing, right? For all the promise of automation, there was as much effort in setting it up, maintaining it, as it was then ultimately saving me in time. And I think we're seeing that same thing now with AI, where there's a huge promise, but to get to that level of output and performance, you need to do so much work and you need to think so hard about what to put in that it almost defeats the purpose a little bit. And I think that's why we're seeing that level of dissatisfaction there.
Yeah, I mean, I would also, I agree with that. And I would also add that I don't know that it's really a reasonable expectation that a large language model would be good at forecasting or budget management. Like in and of itself, there's nothing in its capabilities that would kind of make it like, whereas something about writing ads or writing emails, writing scripts, these are all the production of language, and it makes perfect sense that it does well there, and also that it's an obvious use case for people. But like forecasting, a language model isn't by itself going to be able to do a forecast. It will then need to do some math or write some code that could then do that. And this is challenging even for pre-existing human-coded software that people have been working on for years. Forecasting is non-trivial. So I think it's like also experiments and testing. To me, it makes total sense that usage and satisfaction is lower with these things. Like I think on the other hand, kind of in a middle ground, something like reporting or insights, these have improved in usage and satisfaction. And that's something like a year ago or a year and a half ago, I would have told you that insights and reporting are not really possible with AI. It's just, and now it's definitely improved. I think for someone who's like advanced at reporting and insights like myself, I don't use it that much. But I think for someone who's less experienced, it can be a huge supplement to them.
Sure. And I think also of course, the technologies will evolve. So even maybe for forecasting budget management, time will tell, but it will become easier maybe to feed the models, indeed what Fred says. And you have to, of course, do your homework and provide it with the right data, but maybe even for that, it becomes easier. And the model will say, just upload your CSV and I will take care of the rest.
Yeah. I mean, there are dedicated models for forecasting and they're not large language models, but a large language model could call upon a forecasting model and do stuff like that. But
so exciting to see what the graph will look like next year.
Agree.
Yeah. Let's go to next subject because we're running a little bit out of time. Agency life. So we also asked the client-agency relationship. What is the biggest challenge? And yeah, a huge one. I think this one stands out every year. Expectation management and communication.
Yeah. So please keep in. This is exactly where what I said at the start. I would love to hear the other side of the table, so to speak. This is mostly the agencies and freelancers complaining about their clients, basically, right? There's this fun quote. I said, "I would love my business if I didn't have to deal with my clients or my employees." But this is just. This is and the expectation thing is usually agencies complaining about clients just not being realistic about what their money can buy, whether it's the ad budget or the budget for the agency, or continuously, just keeping asking for. I mean, we can maybe not blame clients for trying, but that's the main, complaint basically. Of course, if you're an agency or a freelancer, you should think hard about how to solve this. So I would, if we talk about this slide, maybe we can make it more useful for the audience by thinking, okay, maybe Ed is a good person for the type of thing. Like, how do you solve this, right? How do you don't get into these misaligned expectations and communication problems between agencies and clients?
I have a checklist for this.
Great.
Yeah, you have a checklist. You can download
reactive versus proactive checklist.
Sure.
So the expectations and communications you can wrap into one. And I'm sorry, agencies and freelancers, I was one. It's our fault. Set expectations early. Literally, it's a pre-sales thing. Realistic expectations, what they mean, how you communicate, what that means, and so on. We're really bad at doing it because we want the money, so we don't want to put barriers in the way. We don't want to say, "Oh, I don't want a weekly meeting." Of course you don't want a bloody weekly meeting. Be honest. If they do, don't take them on. If their expectations are to quadruple tomorrow and you're just going to go for it, YOLO it with PMAX, that's your fault. So looking at my checklist, so something productive out of this, proactive versus reactive. So I've got a checklist. I'm going to look at it. Let's use lead gen. So how do we get around this? Expectations, over communications, what do we do about it? Well, we track and monitor, and we have to measure things like business KPIs, not just Google KPIs. So contact rate. So if you're doing lead gen, when the client, and I'm sure you've heard this, a client will ring you and say, or email you, the leads are crap, or I'm not getting enough leads. Well, are you measuring their contact rate? Are you measuring how often they pick up the phone, how quickly they respond, what's the quality of their response? And that should be part of your KPI structure. You should be not only doing Google Ads KPIs, leads, lead quality, lead to sale rate. Is it out of location? What's wrong with the lead? You should also do the KPI of the business, how they're responding and handling leads. It makes a massive difference. So that's a more proactive response to this, as opposed to being reactive, saying the client's not happy, they've got high expectations, I need to go in and fix something.
Is it also maybe
way ahead of it.
If you want the business, you are maybe over-promising, and it takes quite some courage to say, hey, this is the expectations, but maybe you're in the bid with another agency, but your expectations are lower, maybe more realistic, but lower, and you have to be tough to be to have.
Let the other agency win. Yeah. If the other agency is going to lie, they'll fail. So we often did either a 2 or 3 tier projection, essentially based on existing business. If it was to stay the same with a small uplift, and then a medium and a high, and give them a range. Like the high target is, if everything aligns beautifully, you do your job, we do ours, we could probably get you to here. But realistically, we're probably going to fall somewhere in the middle. Whereas a lot of people just go, "Oh yeah, we'll get you this." And there's no wiggle room.
Let me throw out a new idea. So you're talking about the hesitance to communicate, to have weekly meetings. I was in Cannes at the marketing festival, and Microsoft's chief scientist, Jamie Stevens, she made the point that thanks to AI, work will eventually become more about having interesting conversations. And I think the reason we push back on having those conversations to some degree is that they take away the time from doing the things that we know we need to do, right? But at the end of the day, AI sort of holds that promise that if we instruct it correctly, it can actually do a good job for us. And I'll tie this back to another idea. So I live in Silicon Valley, so I talk to a number of people who work at OpenAI directly. They no longer write code by actually typing on a keyboard. Actually, they do type on a keyboard, but what they type is the prompt. They specify what it is they need the computer to do for them. And they get really specific. They get specific to a degree that like none of us here can fathom. Like they will literally write 10,000 word prompts to tell the computer what it is they need and kind of give it guidance on how to do it. And then it does an amazing job producing that, right? I don't think we need to go to that extreme, but I think if we all got better at prompting, if we better understood how to connect our data into these AIs, much of the work we do today would be done for us in a way that we'd be very satisfied with. And we could actually have these weekly meetings and have that be a great conversation that informs, how's the business going? It's not just about the PPC campaign, but like what has changed in the landscape? How are the tariffs impacting you? Like, what do we need to do about that? And that's always been the promise, right? Is that we should focus more on strategy. But part of having that right strategy comes from having these meetings. So I do think that over the next couple of years, we're going to see a transformation in terms of how work is done and what it means to work in PPC.
I would counter slightly and just say, how many clients is that scientist served? Probably zero. So I'm not sorry, Fred. I'm not. That sounds like.
I don't think she's talking about today, right? I think we're laying out the vision. So I'm not saying that you should be in that place today, but I think that's what we need to think about for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and the tools need to really come good to achieve that, because freelancers and agencies are already overrun, and if you turn around and say you need to do more meetings, I think most of them would.
Yeah, to use the analogy, maybe the client and the agency should prompt each other better. So they should have more like a good instructions and set the right expectation. But it also asks, of course, from the advertiser, the one that outsources to the agency, to have some sort of a knowledge level and understand that I rather hire the agency that has realistic expectations than the one that overpromises. And I think maybe that's sort of an area of natural tension, of course. So expectation, communication, two traits of a human being is still a struggle in that sense.
Let's make sure we cover some other interesting slides that we haven't gotten to yet. Also, I'm a bit surprised to see an increase in fully custom. I get it when it's really like complex client with complex requests, but fully custom to me sounds like reinventing the wheel if you're doing something similar that you're already doing for like 10 other clients. So why would you make it fully custom? Work with some kind of, I don't know, menu card of things they can buy from you. Billable hours, don't get me started. I could rant an hour why I hate it so deeply, but especially with AI, like, the whole hour thing doesn't make any sense.
No.
And I get it, agencies pay their employees on hours. That's a salary, right? That's being paid by the hour. But that doesn't mean that your client has to pay the agency by the hour. Being paid by the hour basically means I want to get paid for showing up, and I'm incentivized to take my time. That's not what any client wants, right? They want to get paid for at least a deliverable and as fast as possible, not as slowly as possible. So, but it's still there. It's hard to kill, apparently. And then there's all these combinations of fee and spend. I do want to, for agencies doing PPC, again, to try to make it actionable and then help them with how to improve this. There was this great YouTube video. It's 8 minutes, how our agency billing is structured. 3 years ago, Kasim Aslam, back then from Solutions 8, went 8 minutes through how they bill their PPC clients. Super transparent with tiers, with models. I like that model. I'm not saying copy paste that. Well, maybe you should. Actually, they've been acquired and they're not transparent anymore. So very ironic. But the YouTube video is still out there, just as a source of inspiration. If you're currently stuck on an hourly model or some model that you don't think is future proof, maybe look into new models. Yeah, Ed.
Can I just quickly say, also, if you're on YouTube, look for Ultimate Solution by me, and that will show you how to get away from this nightmare that you got yourself in. Fully custom or billable nightmare. Become a solution, charge for the solution. Easy.
Yeah.
Oh, but I do more work for client A versus B. Well, stop worrying about that. Just make sure there's enough in it for you and they're making money. It's got to be a solution now. You can't be charging Google ads plus custom arrangements and this crap.
Plus, if you just a simple example, if you ask for a deliverable, let's say you charge clients $2,000 or euros for an audit, for a PPC audit. All of a sudden, it's pretty fun if you can do that same quality of audit in 5 hours instead of 10 hours or whatever, right? That increases your profitability, all that stuff. If you just say, well, we'll do an hourly rate and we'll track how long it takes us, you will never increase your profitability, or you won't be able to build a scalable agency. If you double your revenue, you need to basically double your number of people at your agency. So that's not, I think, the future.
My solution fixes that.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
literally, and it doesn't focus purely on Google ads. Google ads is the traffic source, but there's so much more that we should be doing. And I'm only pushing it because I literally see people, growing agencies, growing freelance gigs, using it today when lots of people are going, oh, we're screwed, can't get work. It's like, I am seeing people grow like 50% every quarter, doubling every year. Like, I'm seeing it. So it works. It happens. I'm with Wijnand, get away from billable hours. That's just end game stuff.
All right. Thanks, guys, for these insights. Let's go to the topic of trust in the platforms. That's another slide. We asked them, what's your trust in the different ad platforms? It's always interesting.
I think there's one where we compare. Yeah, this one. We compare it with the year before. We can be pretty short about this one. Most of them are pretty much the same, except Meta and Google actually improved a bit, or maybe quite a bit. They were in a bad place, like end of 2023, maybe kinds of lawsuits. I don't remember exactly. There were lots of things going on, but at least that improved for them. So I would say good for them, but still not great. I mean, let's be honest. And X, Twitter got even worse, which is kind of to be expected.
And LinkedIn, people are positive about LinkedIn last year
kind
also.
of a trustworthy platform, right? So like pretty business-wise. And this is just trust in the platform. Not doesn't mean you're guaranteed for your results or that kind of stuff. It's more like, how do they treat you as an advertiser, right? Do you think they have your best interest in mind? Are they transparent enough, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So Google pretty much improved a lot. LinkedIn was already stable. Indeed, that has also to do with maybe also the transparency and the things we talked about before. So let's do a roundup. If you would invest your time in as an agency, as an agency owner, or as somebody working at an agency, where would you focus your time on? What is the best way to invest? What is the best time investment? Is it creativity? Is it tooling? Is it strategy? Wijnand, what's your take on that?
I would think the human skills, maybe it's pretty generic, but there are some things AI is not good at, like empathy or creativity or resolving conflicts or all that typical human stuff. And maybe Fred already pointed a bit in that direction. If we spend less time on the nuts and bolts because of automation and AI, there's still that stuff that needs to be solved from human to human. And also when it comes to creativity in general, like I can still smell an AI written text from a mile away if it's like fully 100% AI written. If it becomes a mix, it's of course harder to recognize. So that part. And I was also recently listening to a podcast with Simon Sinek where he talked about with all these AI stuff, we get a bit obsessed by the outcome. Like, oh, I got a quick result, right? I prompted and I got a script, I got a text. Oh, great, now I'm done. And he said, you're not growing as a person like that, right? You just get a quick win, but you don't learn what makes a great ad or what makes a great script, whatever. And he said, I write books, and of course the book is the outcome, but the whole journey of writing that book, all the struggles and research and the hours I spent in that's what makes me an expert, not the fact that there are words on paper. So, and he says, I'm curious about what the future generations will be like. Like current people don't remember. He gave the example, current people don't remember phone numbers anymore, right? They used to. I said, I remember when I used to remember phone numbers. I lost the skill of remembering phone numbers, and I don't mind. But let's not lose the skill of all the other stuff that is pretty important still because we outsource it to the AI. So yeah, use AI a lot, but keep thinking, okay, what's the unique human skill I'm going to add on top of that, and focus maybe on more on that. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you. Ed, what's your take on it? What should we invest in?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Fundamentals still matter, and you can't become an expert without that expertise. So don't skip it. Even if it's boring, don't skip it, because the people that skip it, they're going to be behind you at a certain point. You'll catch them up and then you'll overtake them. Goes back to loss of control and measurement. If you want to be a Google Ads person, you need to think wider than Google Ads. So you've got to be absolutely, am I allowed to swear? Hot on first-party data. Track your data, capture your data, measure that data. So you've got that you can measure against your Google Ads. Is campaign A agreeing with my tracking that it's getting 22 conversions, or is my tracking telling me it's more? Move your budget based on that. If you can track down to ad group, even better. Down to keyword, because they still exist, even better. And you can with first-party data. So it allows you to manipulate your budget outside of Google Ads. Super important. It allows you to then track your client or your business KPI and performance. So you're outside Google Ads now. You're understanding the business, how it responds to this traffic and these leads coming in. Super critical. Just doing that will improve your performance and your understanding. And then there's another million things you can do. You can do the landing pages. You can do the content for them. You can do, if it's lead gen, you can help your client with email follow-up, with call handling, text follow-up, scheduling, whatever it may be. There's so many things you can do. That's in that ultimate solution video, which is free. So yeah, you've just got to go wider and expand your expertise. And it doesn't mean more work, because I do believe that Google Ads is easier for a lot of people now, even though the survey disagrees with me. So I don't know. What do I know?
So you have to be an expert in many different subjects. So that's your advice, to be
become a solution.
Know where to handle, where to set, where to use tools, but have the domain knowledge also. Yeah, Mike, what's your take on it? Maybe specifically for the e-commerce specialist among us.
Okay, so for e-commerce, maybe I'll just pick up the thread there from Ed about first-party data. I agree with that a lot, and I've been emphasizing first-party data for a few years. But everyone, when they hear first-party data, they think audience lists, they think remarketing lists, stuff like this. And first-party data is a lot broader than that. So for e-commerce, it's basically anything that's off-channel, that if we're talking about Google or Meta, it doesn't matter, but anything that channel doesn't know about can be your first-party data. So, because they know audiences really well, and you can supplement that with your audiences, and they know a bit about your catalog from your product feed and from their shopping graph, which is everyone else's product feeds, basically. But they don't know specifics like your sell-through rate, what you're getting. If you've got great terms on certain products that you're purchasing, they don't know. Even I was talking about this at SMX Advanced recently about work we did with the Miami Heat. Miami Heat ultimately sells they've got these jerseys that are very commoditized in a way. Nike is selling them, retailers are selling them, and Miami Heat is never going to win on pricing. But Miami Heat could take information about which player had a good game, and they could make that into a first-party advantage, because the retailers have to cover all the teams and all the brands. They don't care that much. They're never going to take the time to act on that. And likewise, like Nike, no one else is going to care as much. So you can take something that you might not think, oh, a player had a good game. That's first-party data. It can be if you activate it that way and if you use it to your advantage. So that's definitely a piece of advice I have for e-com, is to, because we're increasingly becoming participants in these channels, we have to think a lot about the inputs and the outputs and not worry as much about what's going on in the middle, but then make those outputs as high quality, those inputs as high quality as you can, and be creative, think imaginatively about what those could be.
So a creative way, try to get more data, more quality data.
Yeah.
To feed the whole system. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fred, what would you advise PPC marketer in 2025, and he is behind his desk and say, okay, now I have my Friday afternoon hack time. Well, where should I invest my time in?
Well, you all decided to be digital marketers, and like people said, it's one of the fastest moving fields. Yeah. What's really exciting is that nowadays, every white-collar worker, not just digital marketer, is feeling that pressure. Everything's starting to move so fast because of AI. People don't know what's going to be next. And you're leading in that. You've been experiencing that for your whole career, right? So you know how to live in a world of change. And I think the one fundamental point that I can leave you with is you are not competing against AI, because everybody here says like there's still things that humans do better. So you're not competing directly against AI. You're just competing against people who use AI better than you do. That's the standard, right? If you can be better than your competitor at deploying AI to make yourself more efficient, to learn new things and build new skills, you're going to be fine.
So rely on your human skills, creativity, etc. Invest in that. And also what Wijnand says. So if you invest in that and go through that struggle, you will be able to connect the dots maybe.
Right, and I'm saying use AI, use it extensively, innovate. Yeah. You cannot rely on just your human skills. It is your it's your humanity plus AI that's going to take you to the next level.
Yeah, guys, I think we had a great session, a great PPC survey summary discussion. I think it are exciting times for all PPC marketers. All kinds of things changing. That makes, I think we are in a great industry, and that makes our job fantastic. It's never the same if you look at it a year back. So challenging times. Thank you for your insights. I think this webinar will be shared on all the socials later. And I think I want to thank all, of course, the panelists, Wijnand, Ed, Mike, and Fred, and all the viewers. And I think the individual questions can be asked on the social, so please connect to the panelists on LinkedIn and ask them questions if you have them. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.